We have been hosting a series where some of our newest team members and teachers have been joining us here on the podcast. And today I'm bringing on one of our new members of our coaching team here to the podcast. And I'm so excited to have this guest back because she was one of the very first guests we ever had on the podcast when we started it years ago when it was called Magic on the Inside. And I can't wait for you to hear from her today. We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. Welcome to this episode of Expedition to Soul. I'm Sarah, founder of the Sisters Enchanted, and I am joined by the one, the only Pati Diaz.
Hello.
Hi, Pati. How are you on this fine day?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I am good. I'm good. So, Pati, I have known you for a while.
Yeah.
And when I met you, you were, well, when I first met you, like talked to you one-on-one, I think you were like sort of toying with the idea of doing some kind of like very mundane, like helping small businesses, I think, like with OSHA sort of stuff. I don't know. It was not exciting.
That's not at all.
But like, it's what you knew. And you were like, I could do this. Let's talk about it. And from then till now, you've had quite so many life experiences, changed your path, and have just joined us in our mastermind as one of our coaches. Well, as really the sort of lead coach in the mastermind at this point, because you were already doing coaching sessions. We brought you on, like, you know, roll up your sleeves, get in there with the masterminders and sort of help rock their world and bring them to wherever it is that they want to be. So, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself to kick us off?
Okay, so my name is Pati. I live in the LA area. I was born and raised here. I've lived in Canada and in the Midwest, but this is where I always come back to. And I have an online, it's kind of like a mishmash. Like I started my online business once I realized, like you said, going from this insurance world that I knew but didn't love, figured out I started with vision board workshops. And that led to, well, why don't I also help people, you know, do the things that are on their vision boards, that are being put on their vision boards, and just take it beyond that. And it's just been such a ongoing learning process, but I love that I got the idea for a business. Like I took this business class that you offered initially without even having an idea for a business, just like, well, okay, maybe I'll learn something or get something out of it or something down the line. And then it just kind of blossomed from there. And it, like you said, it's gone through many evolutions and iterations, but yes, I'm still here. So I guess I'm really into it.
Yes.
I'm stuck with it. So.
Listen, that's the thing that stands between successful people and not successful people. Just freaking sticking to it and showing up. There is not like a secret sauce, as you know. There is like knowing what you stand for, sharing it with people, sharing it with the right people, and doing it every day. Like there's a million ways you can do that, but that's like the core tenets of it. Just do it every day.
Yeah, exactly. And I've noticed along the way, like with you said, with, you know, just life challenges and things, that it's the thing I've wanted to keep doing, right? Like, you know, when you have a job, it's like, oh, I have to get back to work, or I can't take enough, you know, I've taken too much time off, or whatever the case is. This is like, on whatever level I could do it, I wanted to, right? It's like, oh, well, you know, it's just like the thing that I wanted to do every day. So I think that's definitely one of the lessons I've learned. It's like I've stuck with it, and patience, and that I want to be doing it. So
yeah, for sure. Should we've never told this story before, and I'm hesitant to tell it, but should we tell the story of the time that you didn't even like manifest a trip, but like manifested a trip to Florida from a phone call from our mutual friend, Emily. And then next thing you know, you were coming to Florida.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. It was a retreat, right? A business
Yeah.
retreat.
And two
Yeah.
people who were supposed to come couldn't, one missed her flight and
Yeah.
one had like a bunch of series of events and was like, I think the universe is telling me to stay home, and
Yeah.
just didn't come. Um, so there was like, and it was already a small group to begin with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I was like you said, Emily, I knew Emily was there and I was like, oh, just like, it didn't work. I don't even remember why, but I was like, oh, I wish I, could have gone or whatever. And she was so excited to see the manatees like in Florida. We talked, she was so excited to see them. And so I was sitting I like to sit on the floor sometimes and work. So I was at my coffee table, just kind of getting ready for the day. And Emily called and I'm like, oh, she's calling to tell me about the manatees. I'm like, oh, she's seeing them. And so I answered and she asked if I could get there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she explained what you said. And then you and I, connected and I said, let me check my, my work schedule. And I was able to flip it. And when I got off the phone with Emily, I'm like, I knew this was like, okay, I could say yes to this or not and regret it. It's like, I was, like you said, I wasn't intentionally manifesting it, but I was like, and so I ended up working it out. And from that call, from the time Emily called me to when I was on a plane was like 5 hours.
yeah, going into like entire California to Florida. Like we're not even talking like one state over.
No. So it was just like, and the funny thing about that is on the way back, Emily and I were on the same flight, so just kind of, so we were on the same flight and we were talking and she's like, when I was flying to Florida, I was sitting next to, a guy and he was talking and he said he wanted to get on this flight to come back, but it was full. And I booked that flight after she had that conversation. I'm like, oh, well, that's the universe. It was saving my seat for me on the way back.
I know. And then you came and and then I got to meet you in person in Florida and it was delightful. And
it was great.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway, here we are again, bringing you into the fold here at the Sisters Enchanted as our mastermind coach. Now, for people who don't know what a coach is, like in a mastermind, can you speak to that a little bit? Because that might not be, those are probably terms that people are not totally familiar with.
Yeah. So the way that I have put it together in my brain and just kind of through the process is like, I started with like the literal term of a coach, like a sporting coach. It's like, what does a sport coach do? They just help you get better and push you when when you don't want to and give you different strategies, but they don't do the work for you, right? They don't hand feed you. They can't feed you physical, getting better physically and all that. You have to do the work. So I put it in that sense and thinking of it, what is another word for coach or synonym? And I thought of mentor, right? Because it's still moving you forward. It's not someone that is, what's another, like some people don't know, like think of it maybe as something along the lines of therapy, but it's like, and this was pointed out to me by a therapist who, it's like coaching is more of moving forward and therapy is looking backwards and whatever you have to unpack or talk about with that. But you can do both, right? So you can, if you have to have therapy or something that will help you, great. But coaching is moving you forward from where you are right now. And I've noticed that things are we're too close to our own things. So like we don't see the other things, we don't see the progress. And so coaching is a really good way to reflect that back to someone. And it's so great to see their face light up when I say something. They're like, oh, I'm like, I see it plain as day. So
yes.
So it's like moving forward and like guiding, but definitely not giving the answers, not giving the solutions, helping the process, help people find that for themselves. Because we, that we all have it within us. It's just how to access it.
Yeah, for sure. How is it? So you mentioned how it's different from therapy. How is it different from like an intuitive reading? Because you also read tarot, you work with the moon, like you do all of this. So how is what you do as a coach different from what you would do if you were providing like a reading or, like how is that just different?
It's different in also because the focus, I think with reading, it might be a reading can help access information or give some insight. But with coaching, especially with what I've learned through here, being here at the Sisters Enchanted, it's like setting an intention with coaching and something that you're working to manifest or feel that feeling or be that person. Whereas a reading can sometimes just give you insight or some background or maybe a different perspective on things. But it's like in a reading, I don't think of necessarily giving an action step or coming up with an action step. And with coaching, I definitely want to include or end with some kind of action step to keep them moving forward. So insight versus action, I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Because as a person who, like, I think that something that's built into the way that I work at the Sisters Enchanted now is a lot of coaching just built in innately. But really it's for me, like a reading is more, here's the information, like, here's what I'm seeing. This is the information as I'm seeing it, do with it what you will. Take it or leave it. But coaching is very much, here's what you just said to me. Let me reflect it back to you. Can we ask this question in another way?
Okay. Yeah.
And right. Like, and like you said, just everything you said, like moving them forward. But really that like questioning, reflecting, guidance, whereas a reading is like, here's the information.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could start with a reading and move into coaching, right? A lot of, I think that happens a lot with, especially within this community with that. But yeah, it's just a different focus as to what you're doing in each one.
Yeah. So you recently joined us as a coach in our mastermind, as like the Pati, the mastermind coach. What was it like when we presented the opportunity for you and asked you to do it? Did you have any hesitation, or were you like, what inspired you to say yes and dive in? Because you were a community member first here at the Sisters Enchanted, through a variety of classes and programs here. And so just, was it like a full body yes, or was there some hesitation, or like, what was the, and I guess the secondary question to that is, when you decided to say yes, what's it like being from community member? Because you've also helped cover co-witchings for us. You've hosted in different events we've had. So what's it like going from one side to the other also?
First of all, it was definitely a yes. I didn't have any hesitation, and I was sitting on my couch when I got the email or when I opened it, and I was just, my dad was outside. He's like, "What are you yelling about?" I'm like, "I have this opportunity." And it was, I have to look back actually in my planner to write, because I just kind of jot stuff down for the day. I don't remember if that came first or if like this decision I had made to minimize, lower, like go part-time in my job and creating the space. And I have to look, because they're pretty right there close to each other. And I'm like, look, either I made a decision or I was thinking about it, and this opportunity, presents itself. And it was just like, definitely a yes. So I didn't have any hesitation. And going from one side to the other, it is definitely like, I get to know people on a different level, even though they've been in the community or not, either brand new or they've been there for a while, getting to know and work with them on a different level. And like, I thought about this, and I don't know if like in any conversations, like you said, the story, I don't know if I've told this, I was watching a presentation, either a guest presenter or something like early on that in one of the classes or anything. And I was like, oh, that would be fun to do. Wouldn't it be, to be cool to be a presenter there? And I wrote that in my journal. And it was even after it was all done, that I had, the first time I presented, I came across that. I'm like, look what I did. I accomplished it. And so I thought, okay, cool. That's awesome. And then it just, like you said, these opportunities to cover co-witching and to do other conference presentations and things like that. So it was just kind of like this evolution of building up to that as well, even though I didn't know there was this kind of goal at the end, right? Or desire. It just kind of, by saying yes to the things that feel good, just keeps bringing more opportunities that aren't even in our minds. And so that's kind of how this evolved, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just keep saying yes. And, but say yes to yourself also. So we're doing, this is a podcast series and we have a variety of teachers coming on to talk, but I was talking to Kelly Sroka, who, and about sort of her coming to be part of TSE also. And she's presented before as well as a guest. And I think that that's what I said about her. And it's the same about you, is that you both just show up for yourselves and you do the same. Like you show up in the community groups, you ask questions. I mean, you've been in the community for years now, but like if I go back through any of those replays of group meetings from years ago, I mean, you're there, you're in them, you're asking questions, you're showing up and participating, and you're showing up for yourself. And I think that really that's at the core of so much, is when you show up for yourself, eventually the things start to fall into place.
Yeah.
But you gotta believe and keep showing up for yourself, even if you don't know exactly like what you're showing up for, because at the time you didn't know.
Nope. And see, that's like a coaching reflection right there, right? You see that from the outside.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's true. That's
you just kept showing up for yourself. And I think so. This is one of the things I was going to ask you is if you had, like a great aha moment or an experience so far working with the masterminders that made you really feel like, oh yes, I'm like this, I'm in the right spot. And I'm so excited for this aha moment that's happening. But so that's going to be the question coming up, but to segue into that, I think that so many people, whether it's in our mastermind or in Holistic Witchery or any class that we teach or group we bring together, so many people have this question of like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. And you keep telling me to just like keep moving forward, but like I still have no idea. And I think that you're a very good example of that, because you had an idea. I'm not saying you're just like wandering through life. Like you have a job, you have a life, like you do the things, but you also were like, I think there's something, I just don't know what it is. And from my perspective anyway, now I don't know you in your day-to-day life, but from my perspective, what I've witnessed is a person who just keeps taking action, just keeps trying, and not giving up by a setback, and not being too concerned with like, what exactly is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And more so concerned with what feels like the next right growthy step. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I've witnessed in you. So I don't know if that's how it, often from our own experience, it feels hard and scrambled.
It is like, oh, in the overall sense, yes. Like, of course, there's been those moments like, oh, and I think that process also just continuing to do it has helped with the thoughts like, oh, it's taking too long, or I don't know what this next step is. And so getting to know myself better and doing work, like doing the intention work and trying things is really what I've noticed looking backwards, where I do get the next step. Like, just try something, get out of, trying to think of all the possibilities and all the steps that I know and don't know and that might come up. And when I catch myself feeling stagnant, that's where I know I am, right? It's like trying to think it through. And it's like, okay, just do something, go on a live or try something or, and so I know, like in myself, when I feel that, I have to either check, am I just in the learning mode? Because I know I get into learning mode. Oh, I have to learn and all the things first. And so overall, I think you're right. But it took practice to do that for myself. It's like, okay. And just like, I guess I don't have to be comfortable. And I didn't know that in the words, but I'm like, well, okay. And I don't have to be comfortable. I feel weird, but I'm going to, do it anyway.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, it's been such a fun thing to witness in you. So like, how have you had an experience with one of the masterminders so far? You've been doing this for just a short time now, but has
Mhm.
there been anything that made you really think like, oh, I'm so glad I kept on this path and was able to, be in this moment?
Yes, there was one. It wasn't even, how sometimes as a coach or as a teacher, you're in the space of, okay, what can I do? Like, let me help them. You're thinking about what to do and
Yeah.
ways to help them through. And there was one where we have these 15-minute sessions, right? So where they can like check in, or if they're feeling stuck, they can book just a quick 15-minute session. And one student, we were like sick. She even posted about it. We were 6 minutes in and she had like this aha moment. She's like, that's it. That's the question. And I was basically just verbally processing something. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's it. It could be done at 6 minutes. And it was so simple. It was just a question that I was saying to myself, I mean, out loud, but so if this is what you want, that's it. It was just like 6 minutes. And I was like, I wasn't even trying. I wasn't focused on.
Like, I just got started.
I'm like, wait, I was just processing this and trying to, and she was so excited and has posted that she's gotten multiple insights from that. It was a couple weeks ago. So it was just like, oh gosh, I don't even have to try. And like good stuff happens. And I'm like, I guess I can do this thing.
Yes. And we wouldn't have you here if you couldn't, Pati. I think that that's such a mindset shift though, is for people on the receiving end and the doing end, is that it doesn't have to be, I think we think everything needs to be harder than it is,
Yes.
and like once you realize it doesn't have to be that hard, and also shift your mindset to look for like the one good question that changes everything until you need the next good question. And I think when we're like thinking about time that we spend on something or investing money on ourselves, and we often get stuck in this, like, I don't know, place of trying to explain or like value. But when we shift our mind to say, like, this one question made it so that I made this one change that then changed this and changed this, suddenly, like, what, you can't put a value on the right question at the right time. And
Yeah.
that's what good coaching, I think, does, is the right question at the right time, which causes a ripple effect that, you never would have had otherwise.
Yeah. And not even having like just that instant, not having the question planned ahead of time, right? It's like, that's just what came up in the process. But yeah, it's quite, it's cool. And then I noticed that I look back and I see how this also, like that mundane job, I worked as a claims investigator. So I did a lot of interviews and a lot of asking questions and a lot of follow-up. So even though it was not in the realm, this process of asking questions was, I was being trained for that without even realizing it. It's like, oh, okay. I've been training, even though in that training ground, I was like boot camp or whatever, because boot camp isn't necessarily fun, but it's like getting you ready for something. So I was like, oh, okay. So questions.
No. Yes, just the right questions. So when you've been participating now, because we have group calls and then you do one-on-one calls, what's it like being the sort of the deliverer, I guess? I don't know how else to say that, the host of a one-on-one call, because I think we can get a little bit like leery about showing up on Zoom with somebody we don't really know.
Yeah.
So like, how do you find that as the facilitator of the call?
It's a way, because the group calls typically have like a focus, right? Even if there's not a curriculum, there's like a focus or at least an idea of what will be covered. And with the one-on-one, it's like, oh, I can get curious, right? It's like, I can ask, like you said, just focus on questions. And not many, but a couple of times people have said, I hesitated scheduling one because I didn't know what to ask. I'm like, I'll ask.
Yeah.
I'll ask. That's okay. And so it's that having a focus versus getting curious. And even if they have a specific reason for scheduling the call. It's like, okay, let me get more curious about that. And it's just that opportunity to get more personal insight with them and see more of an interaction on a personal level, even though it's on the screen, right? Because in a group, we're paying attention, or we're waiting for the next person, or we're listening to other share. And so it's this different type of connection and a way to, and an opportunity to get curious and not have such the structure, I guess, this specific focus.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know that I'm a person who struggles to figure out what questions I want to ask, because I feel like I often know what my problem is. Like when I have one, like, oh yeah, there's that problem again. But I think when you just show up and say to somebody, this is the problem I'm having, and this is how it's making me feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then that person, if they're, great, if they're a great coach, will be able to just ask a question about that, and then get you thinking in a way that you didn't think before and get you out of your own head. So it's a great, just a great thing. So our mastermind, for people who don't know, it's sort of I guess it's like the next step. If you take in Holistic Witchery, we even have a small group component to Holistic Witchery where you can get one-on-one support. And Pati, you've been onboarding people into that. And like what we do is pull out their specific, like what they should focus on individually for Holistic Witchery. And then we provide them like timelines where provide what you've worked on or things you want feedback on to us, and we can support you in that. So what is like, what would you say, looking at those and the people coming in, like, what are you just really looking forward to maybe in seeing the transformation of these people who've joined in the small group? I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that question.
Oh, that's okay. See,
but like I put together their plan, and then Pati, you've been introducing their plan to them. And since you're the mastermind coach, certainly like keeping tabs on the plan. So just what are you, like with the things that you've seen, what are you looking forward to kind of seeing in people a few months from now?
I think like with the ones that have done that, like in that small group component, I think this extra mastermind aspect of it is a way that it helps them feel not so overwhelmed, right? Especially if they're in that space, like, oh, I have all these desires, or I don't know what I want, but oh my gosh, there's all this stuff and I don't know how to apply it. And so showing them that breakdown, and it's like, oh, it gives them a focus. It gives them this direction, even if it's very general, where they seem like, oh, okay, well, I'll start with this and then move on to something else, where otherwise they're just like, oh, I want to do it all. And then I think that's where it kind of gets like, oh, but I'm not doing anything, which is all of us, right? We want to do all the things, we don't do anything. So it's nice to just have just as they're getting started, just like, okay, I'll just start here and see how it develops. And I don't know if calm is the right word, but just like ease, maybe like the sense of, okay, I'll start here.
Yeah. No, I love putting those together, because every person really had like a different thing that they brought to the table. Like everyone's story was different. They all had different kind of things they were working on. And so that really, I had to put on my like thinking cap to pull from the materials, and think like, all right, well, what do we have that's going to support them where they want to go and like get them ready for that. And I love that we're a person in our community, and our material, and you can speak to it just as well as I can. So you're really able to not just coach people, but also all of these resources that everybody has in the mastermind. It's not just like stuff they'll never access, because it's there, and that's like, that they have those tools. So you are very well versed in the toolkit that's at their disposal also. Which I just love. It just brings everything together. It's like sing-song harmony.
Yay.
All right, Pati, what advice would you have for somebody who's maybe on the fence of joining us in either Holistic Witchery, or maybe if they're in Holistic Witchery and they've been thinking about the mastermind, but it feels like a scary investment? Like, what would you say to anybody who is just the on the fencers.
Yeah. I think back to when I first even became aware of, of doing things for myself to improve myself instead of simply repeating the same pattern. So if there's anything, even if your life is great, and I think a lot of people kind of get like, oh, I have to have a problem, or I have to have something not, that I hate, or, anything negative to do this. And it's like, no, we can always improve on ourselves. We can always access, if it's stuff that you're loving, like access and attract more of it, right? But we have to become even still a different person to step into that. And so it's an expansion process wherever you are, right? And I've noticed I didn't have things that I hated. It was just I didn't have the tools to move myself forward or to start learning different ways. And so I think that's where I felt like, well, this is where I am. I've said it many times. This is the bed I've made, so now I have to lie in it, right? Or like, use it. And when I told that story once, a friend of mine said, you just needed to do a new bed. You just needed a new bed. And I'm like, it's like that type of thing. It's like, oh, well, my bed, it's like it wasn't terrible. I mean, I wasn't suffering or anything, but it was just, like you said, there's just something more.
Yeah.
But how do I access that? And so I think that is by far the best thing that I have gotten from this. Like, just keep, going for more and finding the new bed. It's up leveled. Not that you have a bad bed, but up leveling it.
That's such a good conversation. This is the kind of conversation we have in the mastermind because, and like, we totally need to wrap this up, but this is the kind of thing that holds people back though, because we think that we're greedy, selfish for wanting more. But I think that the way we think about more is like, we think about more in, I don't know, like a consumption way, like more stuff, more whatever. But like, even if you're a happy person, the happier you are, the more steady you are in yourself when somebody else isn't happy, and you can like radiate that and support them in being happier. Like even the more money you have, like we think like money and greed and like certain people are a certain way, but like, all like studies show time and time again that women who have more money, they donate more money, they give back, they shop small, they support other small businesses. And having more money just means that you can make more powerful spending decisions, like you can buy from the small business hand making their stuff in-house, whatever, right? Like you don't have to order it from a company shipping it from overseas and it's like plastic that's going to rot in the earth. Like you don't have to do that because you can support the local company. And so I think we think of more as like, shouldn't we be, and people have said this to me on the internet, like, shouldn't you be grateful for what you have, Sarah? And I'm like, I am certainly grateful for what I have. Like, every day I look around, I am so grateful for what I have. And I am extra grateful for the opportunity to spread that gratitude by having more so that like other people can be grateful for the life that they have, and just amplify their lives. So anyway,
and learning how to be that person, right? That has the more, right? Learning how to be that and like sit in it and be like, I want more of this, or I have more than I did. So I think that's part of that process too, is learning how to be that person.
I think it's so easy to be like, just be this person who's like a martyr or something. Like, this is just the way it is. And I have to suffer so that other people suffer, so I should suffer, or like, I feel guilty if I don't. And it's just like, oh my gosh, the more of your moreness that you are, like the more full and whole and like abundant in all areas, the more everybody rises, because kind people with good magical hearts are putting more out there for others.
So good.
You took me down a side road. Pull me back in. Anyway. All right. Well, Pati, thank you for hanging out with me and for taking a left turn there at the end.
Yes.
I appreciate
it.
All right, y'all. Well, Pati is in all of our communities, so you'll see her hanging out Feel free to say hi if you see her in comments anywhere. She's in our mastermind as our coach. And let me tell you, she is working hard at it and checking in with everybody and really just doing everything that she can do to move people forward. So if you need some moving forward, reach out. We'll get you all the information about how you can join us over there as well. Patty's in there. I'm in there. Anna's in there, as well as a whole bunch of our community members who are very active in the communities, are participants in the mastermind. So it's a great peer group as well. Anyway, thank you again, Patty.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening in. And we hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If you liked this episode of the Expedition to Soul podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it will really help us spread everyday magic, intention, and intuition to the masses, and helps us so much as a small business. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. There are new episodes every Tuesday and astro forecasts for the week ahead every Friday. If there's any topics you'd want to hear, anything you want us to dive deeper into, shoot us an email at magic@thesistersenchanted.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening and being part of the community here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we'll see you in the next episode.